so that we have a truly powerful, positive moment here for today. So let's pass the mic to Vincent, our president.
All right, how's everyone doing today? Are you guys awake? I want to take the opportunity to personally thank Rose Chung here, the founder of the Miss Asian Global Pageant, for giving me an opportunity to be a president of the Miss Asian Global Pageant World. And I can tell you, it wasn't something that I was interested doing, but she never takes no for an answer. So that's just that's a great mentor to have, right? And I want to talk a little bit about how we got started with Imagine Talk. I know I get asked a lot. And simply put, it was actually in 2014. 2014, that's when I became president, and one of the first goals that we wanted to do was create a nonprofit organization called the Asian American Foundation. Our mission is to promote education, community involvement, and of course, women empowerment. Now, of course, women empowerment, that word, that phrase, I mean, that should speak volume, but it wasn't until later, after the pageant, and I know Emma Marriott is not here today, but she was our 2014 winner, and she gave this amazing platform speech during the pageant. I mean, it was only 1 minute long, but it was women in STEM. And from that point, I knew that we needed to promote her. We needed to promote our 2014 class, and we needed to get more speaking enrollments to their, for the year. However, there wasn't any at that time. And I have to thank Dr. Francis Hong, because he's the one that introduced me to TED Talk. And as an inspiration, you guys all seen TED Talk before, right? Well, the first thing I mentioned was, hey, I think we can do this. Let's just do this for our community. And that's really how it all started. 5 years later, today, Imagine Talk is probably one of the most successful events that we've actually hosted. We have attracted more speakers. Now we have speakers lining up for next year. Francis has done an amazing job. And of course, what I love is to promote our court members. In 2018 class has just exceeded all our expectations. They have just raised the roof. Do we have any 2018 class here? I know we have one in the front. Yes, give it up for them. Their accomplishment is off the chart, and you know what? I don't want to brag about it. I'll let them talk about it, and I know that you're reading it from the program book, but I do want to mention our guests, our audience. I want to thank you guys for being here. And I know that because of this event, and I hear stories after stories of people coming to this event, meeting new people, and doing something great. And I encourage you guys to network. So right now, what I'd like you to do is I want you to turn to your neighbors, someone you might not know, okay, and introduce yourself. Like, hey, I'm Vince. Nice to meet you. Now, of course, talk to someone you don't know, all right? And I hope that, yes, there you go. This is what all networking is all about. Okay, anyway, we have a break for that time, okay? And I want to thank every one of you guys for being here, and I'm going to go ahead and hand the mic to Dr. Francis Dock. Thank you very much.
All right, guys, thank you so much for coming, and I hope we're going to have a great time. So I'm going to make this short and sweet bit. What I'm most excited about today is the amount of speakers. We have 16 speakers coming in from around the world, from Canada, from LA, from Dallas, Texas, from Michigan, all around the nation, around the world. They are going to talk about 3 real core concepts. Obviously, there's going to be women empowerment, social impact, and entrepreneurship. But more importantly, in the underlining column, it comes down to really 3 core concepts that we constantly push in Miss Asian Global, in my company, Interns, and definitely here in Imagine Talks. And it's simply what I always try to teach my students: maturity, intelligence, and integrity. Without these 3 things, nothing else matters. You gotta have maturity to handle stress situations that might throw at you. You gotta be intelligent to know how to deal with it in smart, creative ways. And about integrity and honor, the other 2 don't even matter. So, maturity, intelligence, and integrity. Listen to that today, take that away, live your life that way, you'll always succeed. Thank you.
right, thank you Rose, Vincent, and Francis. Can I get another round of applause? All right, now session 1 is all about motivation and empowerment. This session, we'll be learning about how to ensure you have the right mindset and develop the ability to overcome things that you may or may not know are your personal barriers. Our speakers will be sharing their success stories of how they're able to accomplish all these great feats in their lives. So see for yourself if these techniques could be just what you need to help reach your goals and dreams. Our first speaker of the day is the internationally renowned and very accomplished Rana Gurjal. From entrepreneurship to executive leadership to international speaking engagements, Rana has done it all. Not only is he currently a vice president at Logitech and a startup advisor, but he is a 9-time award-winning entrepreneur who actually was just named in Huffington Post's top 10 entrepreneurs to follow list. He'll be sharing about his entrepreneurial mindset today, and I know I'll be looking forward to being inspired in these next 15 minutes. Let's welcome Rana Gurjal.
Hey guys, good morning. So first off, thank you. You guys can hear me, right? Thank you, Francis, for inviting me here. It's a real pleasure. I do a lot of talks, but I don't do talks like this. So this is like, it's a first for me, because I tend to speak about my business successes and my business failures in terms of sort of what needs to be done, market trends, opportunities. I don't talk about myself. And so it's a learning experience, so we'll see how this goes. Francis asked me to speak about the entrepreneurial mindset and speak about my personal journey. And I figured I'll start with a few lessons learned, because I think that probably would be a good takeaway for some of the budding entrepreneurs and people who feel that they're sort of like just at the point of, you know, trying to do something different. And what does it actually mean to be on the other side if you are thinking about being an entrepreneur? For me, you know, I think if I reflect, I've always had really good mentors, and some have left a huge impression on me. There are 3 pieces of advice which has completely changed everything for me. My story is really a story of pivots. Pivots which are not as accidental or random as it might seem. They've been very structured pivots in the sense I have facilitated those pivots, I have actively gone after those pivots. Well, why have I done so? If I reflect back on all the changes I've made, if I have the moves I have made, the career changes I've made, choices I've made, they've been largely structured based on the 3 pieces of advice I got early on in my career. The first one is something which was told to me by a close family member when I was 12 years old. And I come from a very structured, academically oriented family, and we were all expected to be doctors or engineers. And so there was this family member who had gone against the grain and had become an entrepreneur. And I decided to quit school, and was considered someone who you not be like, and eventually was a very, very successful entrepreneur. I used to look up to him when I was growing up, and I always thought, why is he so different? One day, he sat down with me and, he gave me this piece of advice, which has stuck with me ever since. What does it really mean, though, to play it safe? If you think about it, the biggest thing you could do in terms of being, not taking risk is essentially you're losing out all the opportunities that might come across you in your career and in your lifetime. But it's completely contrary to what you are being told by your parents as you grow up. You should focus on your studies, because that's a safe alternative, rather than going to play basketball out there, because you're not going to be an NBA star. But who knows, right? And don't watch too much this, or don't do too much of that, because those are not safe alternatives. That's something which we need to reflect on. The second piece of advice was given to me by my first manager, who I admire a lot. And this is something which I've reflected on quite a bit. So what does it mean by saying chaos is a ladder? In fact, funnily, this is something which I have reflected on all through my life, but more recently this has become popular through a dialogue delivery from Game of Thrones. when you have an alternative, when you have a choice, let's say you're out there looking for a new job, and you have two choices. One is at a reputed company, let's say something like Google, where best of the best work, best brains, best processes, and you'll be working on some really big problems. And the other alternative you may have is to go join maybe an unknown startup, which is, maybe brinking on failure. It's definitely something, a very chaotic setup. What would be the two choices? If those are the two choices, what would be the choice you would make? Most people will make the first choice, because they would feel that's where they add the most value, that would be the better alternative. But it's completely against the conventional wisdom. If everything is going great, if you're in a setup where things are just fine, and you have a lot of other people who are contributing to that towards that game plan, what would be your marginal difference? What would be your marginal value add? And that's really the key aspect to growth, is always continually adding value. So you have to always think about, hey, how do I move the needle forward, and what do I do to make the biggest difference? In a chaotic setup, in a setup where you have pretty much everything falling apart, even a small difference or a small contribution from your side can make a huge difference. And that's something which has always stuck with me. And every time I've been in a situation where I've been too comfortable, or a situation where things are going really well, I've always quit. I've always moved out. Always. Every time. I started off my career in corporate, and as soon as I got really successful on the management consulting side, I went into the technology side. When I grew up in my, through the technology ranks, corporate career, became a general manager, I decided to quit to go take a consumer product company that was tinkering on bankruptcy. This is a company which had 300 million debt with a negative 100 million EBITDA. We decided to take it on because, even a marginal difference there would make would be a phenomenal growth opportunity for me personally. When that was successful, rather than riding the coattails of growing the company, I decided to do a startup, which I'd never done before. So those are the choices which might seem random to a lot of people, but it has led to my growth. This one is a little bit cliched, but I think it's definitely worth mentioning again. Everything one wants is on the other side of the failure. Everything. And I think this is something which most young people are not told often. I don't think most parents talk to their kids about failure. I think failure is something which, especially in, Indians and Asians, they're all in very academically oriented communities. Failure is not such a good thing. We're not, taught to embrace failure. We're taught to take the safer, predictable options and outcomes, and we are taught to necessarily avoid failure. But one of the things which we have to teach our kids is everything they want to do, every boundary they want to push is going to be once they fail. So they have to fail. You have to teach them to fail. You have to teach them to fail often. You have to tell them that you have to go get into the team. I kind of know you suck at basketball, but you have to try. And let's see if you can, overcome that failure mindset. If your kid is shy, put them in selling. You need to help them understand that failure is good. This is a piece of advice which was given to me by a very close mentor of mine, who's chairman of the Boston Group, and someone who has sort of stood with me and stuck with me through thick and thin and advised me throughout my career. And something which I always keep close to my heart. So, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? And I think this is something which, there's a lot of stuff which is written about this. There's a lot of thought processes, there's a lot of books, there's a lot of experts who will tell you what it means to be an entrepreneur. To me, having been on both sides, having been on the corporate side and having been on the entrepreneurial side, I think it's all about mindset. It's completely and entirely about mindset. And that mindset is not something you can flick a switch on. It's something which you have to really either you're groomed to be an entrepreneur from your childhood, and you are in an environment where you take in all those cues and you sort of imbibe some of those learnings, or you have to teach yourself. But the 6 things I'll share with you, well, some of these things will be really surprising to you, because they kind of are not very, well known. in terms of how and what entrepreneurs do, which are different from everybody else. Number one, right? Skills versus gaps. And this is something which is obviously, all very familiar to us. What do you work on? Do you work on your skills or do you work on your weaknesses? You got to work on one thing more than the other. We've been taught as we grow up to work on our weaknesses. What are you lacking? You're lacking on confidence. Build your confidence. Maybe you're lacking on certain ability in terms of math or science or maybe analytical aspects to something. Work on that. What about my strengths? You already got those. Don't worry about that. Work on your weaknesses. This is what we've been taught. Entrepreneurs do completely different. Every entrepreneur I know who's successful work on their skills. They don't care about their weaknesses. They're proud of their weaknesses. In fact, this is something which I have, it was a shock to me when, you speak to some of these guys. They'll blatantly be honest about what they suck at. Their skills, that's what they keep honing. They keep focusing on that and they keep growing that. Because you have a much better return of your investment of time to improve your skills, to get to a point which is that it's vastly better than everybody else's, than to focus on things which you're not good at and get it to a place that you're now average at. Think about that for a second. Here's another one. Focus on perfection, right? Most people think that entrepreneurs do amazing things. Entrepreneurs do a lot of lousy work, but they do a lot of work, right? And so the thing about work is that it's work. You just need to get it done. And one of the things which you sort of hear a lot about in tech startups and in startups is that, they move really fast. And so in order to move fast and in order to get things done, you can't focus on perfection. And this is completely contrary to what we've been taught in a corporate setup, and also what we've been taught in our homes and in our households from our parents. Is focus on something, make sure it's done really, really well, and get it to a point where it's the best. But how about just getting it done? Just getting it done and moving on and doing something else, and then getting something else done, and getting something else done. And this is completely different in terms of how entrepreneurs think. They just get things done, and they just keep moving at it. There's another one, which I love. Opportunities. So there are a lot of opportunities around you. Lots and lots of opportunities around you. We've been taught since we've been, since we've been growing, in our childhood, as we grow up, that we should embrace all the opportunities. You can't say no to anything because what if that's the right opportunity? What if you miss out on something? But you have to say no. You have to say no to pretty much everything in order to get to the things that matter. And that's one big difference I see in terms of how an entrepreneur would act or think versus most other people live their lives and work through their careers. Most people grasp everything that comes their way. Somebody comes and talks to them, hey, look, I have a terrific opportunity here. Maybe, you should be part of this event. Yeah, it's like, maybe I should. Let's go ahead and do that. An entrepreneur is usually going to just say no to that because it doesn't focus on their current agenda of what they're looking to do. Delegation. Huge big one. This is something I live by. I rarely do most things by myself just because there's a lot of things to get done. It's completely contrary to what we've been told in terms of how we need to act as an employee in a corporation. You need to juggle out everything. You need to be self-sufficient. You need to get all of those things under your control. Don't expect somebody else to do something for you, and especially if you've ever heard this phrase that if you want to do something right, do it yourself. That was not said by an entrepreneur. Never, right? So it's somebody who worked for somebody said that. That's how that works. And this is, this is definitely something which is it's a big one. So that's, another big myth which is perpetuated by the corporations, which is multitasking versus monotasking. And I know most people are now sort of feel that they can multitask better with the tools they have in hand. They have a smartphone, they have a laptop, they can be in a cafe, music on, they can talk to somebody, they can also focus on their business priorities, they can write up a report, and yeah, I can get all of that done. I'm very good at multitasking. In fact, my kid the other day told me this. Like, I'm really good at multitasking because he was listening to music while he was, doing his homework assignment, while also watching in a small window somebody playing video games, which is what these kids do nowadays, right? And so I was like, what is going on? It's like, I'm really good at it. It's like, no, nobody's good at it. Everybody sucks at it. There is no thing as multitasking. It's a myth. It's a myth that corporations have told us that you need to multitask in order to be a good employee. You can't multitask. You can only do one thing really well. And so in order to really make a difference, you focus on that thing and you work on that thing. This is my favorite. This is absolutely my favorite. Work-life balance. What is work-life balance? Everyone's coveted dream, this is the utopia, is, achieve work-life balance. And I have heard executives say this, I have heard entrepreneurs say this, I have heard everybody in the middle talk about what it means for them to have the perfect work-life balance. They want to be the perfect husband, perfect father, perfect executive, perfect employee. They also want to coach the basketball game. They also want to spend times focusing on their hobby. That's the fulfillment aspect. It's a lie. It's a myth. There is no balance. It's about priorities. Your balance is aligning towards your priorities. The question is, what are your priorities? If your priority is focused on improving your specific skill or a hobby, that's your priority. You need to focus on that. You can't expect to excel in your career while you're doing that. If your priority is to be an excellent parent, you must focus on that. I mean, that's what you need to get done. But you don't have to sacrifice one thing entirely in order to do the other thing. And that's why I personally believe in seasons versus balance. So for me, I'm in a particular season. This is a season for me to do X, and that's what I'm exclusively focused on. I've been in situations where I've been out traveling for weeks and months, and I haven't had a chance to sort of connect and bond with my family. And then I have been in situations where I'm completely cut out of all of that, and I'm exclusively focused on bonding and spending time with my kids, and focused on what's important on the home front. And for me, it's more around sort of, balancing those seasons and priorities versus trying to achieve a mythical balance that is completely unachievable. So those are the 6 things which I feel, entrepreneurs do different. And in my opinion, the successful entrepreneurs and the people who have achieved the right results have that mindset. So I hope that helps. I hope some of that resonates with you today. If you're a parent, I'd love for you to reflect on some of this today and go home, sit down with your kids, and talk to them about this. Thank you, guys. Sure. I'd love to offer you the link to the slides if you'd like it. I mean, I'm sure Francis and the event might post them somewhere as well, but need to. Thank you, guys.
Rana, thank you so much for sharing about your personal journey and also about your 6 best pieces of advice. I'll definitely be keeping those in mind as I continue throughout my career. Next up, Kim Huynh. Born and raised in the Bay Area, Kim graduated from Stanford in 2014 with a degree in English. She's a senior associate at Tribe Dynamics, where she writes about beauty, fashion, and luxury influencer trends on social media. She's also currently co-developing a screenplay for an Asian American television show with her friends. While she enjoys collecting Michelin stars, she confessed to me that her favorite foods are hot dogs and mac and cheese. And although an avid writer, she also confessed that she has not so great handwriting. So she'll be sharing with us today about your friends, fears, and failures. Without further ado, Kim Huynh.
Last November, I got my motorcycle license. Just a note, my parents are here in the audience, and this is the first they're hearing about this, so Mom and Dad, I am sorry. Why did I get my license? Well, it was not something I'd ever considered until I learned that one of my friends, who is also a female, had a bike. And suddenly, the idea felt equal parts accessible, terrifying, and exciting, in part because I just wanted to see what would happen. And I've come to learn over the past few years that when I feel those things, I cannot turn away. I have to see them through. So within the week, I signed up for a 2-day, 22-hour motorcycle course. And when I showed up, I was the only woman in a class of 18 students. So what I thought would be a relatively challenging but straightforward weekend became a fascinating study in gender. For example, the instructor asked us all to go around the room, say our concerns, what we were excited about, and somehow, I was the only person to have any, or at least to say aloud any real concerns. Everyone else was just excited. Some had already bought motorcycles, or they knew which models they were going to get. And I realized then that many of these students had long ago visualized themselves on a bike. Maybe from the time they were very young. And maybe this was in part because the idea, the image of a man on a motorcycle was so much more common. It was a natural component for these students to add to their identity, whereas I felt very much out of place. During the classroom section, I was the only one to take copious notes, and I was also the first to finish the written exam. But when it came to the range, things were a lot more touch and go. Riding a motorcycle is hard. There is a lot to keep track of just when it comes to the bike's basic operations, let alone what you need to know in a million scenarios you never think twice about when you're driving a car. And this might be embarrassing to admit, but my parents still handle all of my car's maintenance, so my mechanical knowledge coming into this was limited at best. In addition, it was hard not to feel this social anxiety about messing up, or looking stupid, or letting my gender down as its only representative. We did everything in group exercises, mostly in a circle. So if you slow down the entire class. And because I was nervous, I tended to go a little bit slower. One student kept trying to pass me, which you're not allowed to do, but it didn't help with my feeling inadequate. By the end of that first day, I felt so physically, emotionally, and mentally exhausted. I wondered if it was worth coming back just to continue feeling those things. Fortunately, I had friends to encourage me, and realizing that that discomfort was exactly why I needed to come back, I did. When we took our skills test the next day, my bike stalled within the very first few minutes. So my foot touched the ground, I assumed I'd failed. My first instinct was relief. I wanted to hop off that bike, walk away from the entire ordeal, pretend it had never happened, I never tried to do this. But a little voice told me that women systematically underestimate themselves and are usually underconfident for no reason. So I decided not to be my own worst enemy and take myself out before somebody else did. Several grueling hours later, when I found out I did pass, I asked the instructor if he was sure, and then I asked if he was sure again, and again, and whether he was going to change his mind. But he wasn't. And although I will probably never ride a motorcycle again, because if there's anything I've learned from that course, it is that they are very dangerous. Mom, don't worry. It was the ultimate validation of seeking out and confronting fear and discomfort, and coming out the other side feeling accomplished, exhilarated, and capable. I want to return to this idea of image, identity, and representation. Part of the reason I wanted to do this whole motorcycle thing was that it fits so far outside of how I've historically perceived myself. For most of my life, as many of us do, hang on. I took cues for who I should be from what I saw around me. Before I could even walk, I was obsessed with Barbies and princesses, a whole culture of pink. And I came to believe that beauty was the single most important quality a girl could possess. The beautiful princess was always the protagonist, the most loved, the most worthy of being loved. And she received, note the passive verb, she received everything based chiefly on the value of her appearance, including the charming prince. When I was a kid, I daydreamed about growing up one day and having a boyfriend. The way boys daydreamed about, I don't know, riding a motorcycle, with all the freedom and agency that represents, as well as its own limiting code of masculinity. But this need to be beautiful, desired, and therefore valued as a human being is something I deeply internalize, not only from my toys and the media, but from every single adult who ever commented on my appearance. And it happened often, I think, because telling a little girl she's pretty is an easy thing for adults to say when they're trying to build rapport with kids. But when it happens again and again and again, what is that kid going to think is important? The other cue I absorbed was that I was supposed to be smart, because I was, and Asian, and that's what Asian kids in all the movies and TV shows were. There are also always the side characters, which I know is a surprise to nobody in this room. So on my 6th birthday, when I received this Asian Barbie doll, Kira, from a kindergarten classmate, I was very upset. I started to cry immediately. And that's because, I couldn't explain why, because I was 6, but as an adult, I can say it's because I knew I was the protagonist of my own life. I deserved to be the main Barbie, the white Barbie, and I was upset that my classmates couldn't see that. But they, and everyone else, did expect me to be smart. So suffice it to say, throughout my entire educational career, I have been a try-hard, and my dream school was Stanford. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of a brain fart. Okay, so I think this is really intriguing that at that time, I felt these two ideas to be in conflict, being smart and being pretty. So when the opportunity arose, junior year of high school, to compete in a pageant, I took it. And again, I couldn't know this at the time, but I know now that I was seeking some sort of validation. Because if I competed in a beauty pageant and I won, nobody could say I wasn't pretty. Which is ridiculous, because nobody was saying that, nobody cared, why did it matter? But the importance of this was so internalized for me. Later on in college, I would come across this concept by a writer, Garance Frank-Garucha, that really struck me. She theorized that women can operate in two spheres, a system of power and a system of beauty. In the system of beauty, women are a natural resource. We are a form of acquirable wealth, and our currency is our beauty. Oftentimes, the most economically successful women you can think models, actresses, musicians, celebrities, are those who use beauty to their utmost advantage. Alternatively, women can choose to enter the system of power. Power meaning the acquisition of status, capital, position, knowledge, or property without exploiting their physical appearance. Women can operate, sometimes we have to operate in both. We can try to create a space for ourselves in the workplace, the system of power, while operating in the system of beauty in our private lives. And that's why attractive and capable women are often valued more than their less glamorous or fit peers. They are seen as triumphs in two systems of value, double threats. Basically, there's an expectation that women be perfect. But trying to be perfect is dangerous, it's unlimiting, it's unproductive, and this expectation is very limiting. If you're trying to be perfect, you're putting yourself into a box. If you're not going anywhere interesting. Again, at 17, I wasn't thinking about these things. My first pageant turned out to be an extremely positive, informative experience. I stood on a stage like this, answered a question, felt like adults were actually listening to what I had to say, and for the very first time, like what I had to say could matter. And I think that's the perfect example of why pageants are such complicated vehicles for both empowering women and perpetuating standards of beauty and pleasing feminine presentation. I ended up winning that local pageant, didn't place at the state level, but it became my dream to go to California down the line. When I eventually did go to Stanford, I did things within my comfort level. I became an English major because I have to and always will love words. I interned at the Stanford Law School magazine, and I became president of my sorority. The things I did not do were to venture too far outside the Asian American community, take more than one math or computer science class or any physics class in my life ever, in part because I didn't identify with those things, and because I turned away from things when I did not meet with immediate and resounding success. I did compete in another pageant, though not Miss California, because that I wanted too badly. And I never quite felt ready because I was never quite perfect. The next year, I tell myself, I'd have accomplished more things, and I'd have a more impressive resume, I'd be better at my talent. And before I knew it, I had only one more chance to compete. So in a leap of faith, I quit my job as a paralegal and spent 2 months preparing for a local title, Miss Silicon Valley, which went well. But during my talent at Miss California, I had a terrible case of stage fright in front of hundreds of people. I stumbled catastrophically through my piano song and essentially ran off the stage crying, knowing I'd blown my first and last shot at a dream I'd held for 7 years. Basically, it was a mess, and I was inconsolable for a time. My friend and roommate for that week, Miss Santa Clara, was very sympathetic at first, but she had a much wider diversity of experiences than I'd had, and when she was tired of my self-pity, she asked me if I'd ever failed at anything before, if anything had ever gone badly for me. And I realized that it had not. All my life, I've been trying to construct and reaffirm this identity that prioritized intelligence and appearance. I was trying to seem perfect. And anything that challenged that could make me look bad, or that I did not have a 60 to 70% chance of succeeding in, I avoided. And because of that, I hadn't grown very much. I mean, yeah, I did things, but I wasn't well equipped to take risks, absorb failure, gain confidence, and progress. All the other girls who did well at Miss California, they didn't wait to be perfect. They went for a local title every year. They competed at state, they lost or repeated, and got a little bit better every time. It took losing something that I wanted so badly, even if it was just a pageant, for me to realize I needed to have that experience more often. And I really needed to question all the ways my self-perception had held me back. And one thing I really needed to question was why I always had a boyfriend. Between the ages of 15 and 25, I had 5 long-term monogamous relationships, almost continuously. I was never single for more than 60 days at a time. I mean, that's part of the whole princess thing, right? There needed to be a prince. And until I was 25, I never doubted that I would eventually, grow up, get married, and have kids, and that would just tie a neat little ribbon on my life. But the thing about relationships is that they can make you complacent, because you never have to be alone, and they can unduly inform your self-worth. Because if somebody else loves you and values you, you can believe you are okay. During breakups, I would realize with blunt, traumatic force all the areas of my life that I hadn't developed. I hadn't invested as strongly in other relationships, other friendships, and I didn't know who I was if I wasn't half a couple. I realized this every time, but find it easier to jump back into a new relationship, or sometimes, the same one, than to confront solitude. When my last relationship ended about a year after Miss California, I was surprised by how liberated I felt. Sure, there was sadness, loneliness, fear, but there was also freedom. My days became my own, and I had more questions. How could I work to divorce my self-worth from external romantic validation, and relatedly validation based on my physical appearance? And if I never had a family, never got married, what could a meaningful, fulfilling, and happy life look like decade after decade? I don't know where the idea came from, but I set aside being single for 1 year as a personal goal. I actually bought several calendars in which I would literally mark off and count the days, and I still do out of habit. Today say 570. And the past 570 days have been a meaningfully imperfect exercise in deconstructing my identity, negotiating my relationship with beauty, attempting to do and create things with more substance, and learning how to be independent and alone, a full, complete human being by myself. It's been the greatest adventure, making up for 11 years of complacency by chasing new experiences, meeting new people, and building a community by whom I feel truly loved, supported, and surrounded. And over the past 570 days, some of the most interesting and emotionally rewarding things I did were things that scared me a little, like riding a motorcycle, things that made me feel nervous, where there's potentially a bad outcome, although often it was just an uncertain one. The more I did those things, the more excitement I felt for the new and unknown. It became a habit. I felt conditioned to chasing that little twinge of fear and uncertainty and telling myself, I just want to see what happens. Because what happened was that my world kept getting bigger and bigger. And these are things I would encourage everyone to do. to examine and deconstruct your own identity, because to an extent, we all absorb notions of who we should be and what we should be good at from what people expect from us, and how people who perceive to be like us are represented. I'm going to challenge you to really think about who you think you are, and in what ways that may have been limiting. I'm also going to challenge you to pay attention to when you feel that twinge of fear or uncertainty. I'm not talking about mortal fears. If you're scared of heights or snakes, you can be scared of heights or snakes. I'm talking about things you might shy away from because you could embarrass yourself. Success is not guaranteed, and that might make you look bad. Things that make you anxious, that challenge your identity. One example I have that might seem silly is that I used to wear makeup every day, and my manager, who was also here, pushed me on that. She challenged me to come into the office without any. I think we were both surprised by how visceral my reaction was, because I was used to presenting my best physical face to the world, and it made me feel extremely vulnerable not to have that defense. But few things should have that kind of control over you, least of all makeup. So I stopped. I sleep an extra 45 minutes most days, and I haven't looked back. The more you immerse yourself in fear and discomfort, the more you accommodate yourself to them, the more you'll power through to the other side, where you're going to find accomplishment, confidence, and a sense of capability. Your world is going to get bigger and bigger, and you're not going to look back. Thank you.
That was an incredibly insightful look into Kim's life, and also how striving for perfection holds us back and how we shouldn't be afraid of failure. Next up, we have Ashley Huntington. She's heavily involved in the entertainment, tech, and investment realms, and is constantly looking for new solutions to challenging problem spaces. Today, she'll be sharing about a chapter in her life that played a crucial part in shaping who she is today. Please welcome Ashley Huntington.
Good morning. First of all and foremost, I really want to thank the Imagine Talks team and Francis for putting this on. I think this is incredibly valuable in today's world, and it also required a ton of dedication on their part. That said, I also want to thank the team for being really persistent in reaching out to me. I know I can have really bad tunnel vision, and I was a nightmare for at least 3 people in this room, so sorry about that. But it truly is a pleasure to be here today to share my stories with you and hear yours. To really do this properly, I'm going to deviate away from my original topic and talk about a really important chapter of my life that formed me. And I'm going to have to get personal, which is something as a very private person I'm just not good at, so brace yourself. I'm going to have to take you back to a long, long, long time ago, back in a world that expected this of me. Spice Girls, Barbie, super obnoxiously sticky lipstick. In all of that, I was kind of different. I didn't really fit that expectation, because I was a complete and utter mud-covered tomboy. Yeah, I really didn't care. When somebody gave me Barbie, I gave it a haircut. The first time somebody put that lipstick on me, I'm like, literally, this has been designed to make me stop eating junk food. I know it's evil. Spice Girls, Wannabe was pretty darn catchy, so I did sing it, but always behind closed doors. No one's gonna get that out of me. Now, my world was different. My world was about computer games, video games, baseball, not softball. I literally read a book a day, and my go-to subjects were math and playing chess with my brother. I was a full-stack geek, and I loved that world. My brother and his best friend were my 2 only real friends, and if it was their mission to make me think I was a boy, they totally succeeded. I had no idea. In fact, my idea of who I was just so distorted that when my mother would put a dress on me for a special occasion, it would result in something like this. Yeah, that's me. It's hard to see, but I have a super soaker in my hand, and I'm nailing my brother. That was on Easter. I totally demolished that dress. Did not make my mom super happy. But as competitive as I was with sports, I was even more competitive with grades, especially with math and science. And when I had a crush on a boy, my first instinct was to crush him in everything he was good at. I don't really think they got the message that I liked them, but it was okay. I was fine with it. My world was awesome, and I really didn't care about anyone else's opinion, which was great until it ended. And it ended really quickly and harshly. I was in 3rd grade and suddenly everything changed. My mom, brother, and I were driving to school and we got into a really bad car accident. So bad that my mom was pretty much immobilized for an entire year. During that same year, my parents got divorced, and it's the kind of divorce that you see in the movies and you never really want to hear about. I also was attending this private Catholic school, and I wasn't Catholic. And to this Catholic school, if you said divorce, it was kind of like you were saying something the devil would say. So suddenly those kids that I was so good at ignoring made sure I noticed them. And the school turned a blind eye. They only really decided to pay attention when my blood was literally on the ground of the bathroom stalls. And the principal spoke with my class, but I think that only made things worse. Over the course of that year, my identity was fragmented. My focus was muddled. And despite who I was around and where I was, I felt lost and alone. I had been so competitive and so confident, but now I was anxious, constantly thinking, what could go wrong next? And I fixated on all my inadequacies. And I kept thinking, well, maybe if I figure those things out first, then the kids can't get me. I also became terrified that I would do poorly on a test, which I had never done before in my entire career. It was ridiculous, but I was totally fixated on it. Nothing made sense to me anymore. About the only thing I was certain about was there were a million ways to fail, and there was only one way to survive. And survival to me meant disappearing. By 5th grade, I considered myself a well-accomplished ghost. I would eat lunches alone, and after lunch, I'd work in the office. As a backup plan, if they didn't have work for me, I found this desk that nobody wanted to be near, and that became my workstation. Things got really bad. To make matters worse, during this time, my optometrist and dentist decided they were going to gift me with something, and that's called braces, a full mouth of braces, headgear, and glasses. And I had really curly, fluffy hair, so I wanted to imagine somebody like jamming that over it. I was like Hermione Granger, but the not so cute version. It was not great. I had this great avoidance plan going, but it wasn't a perfect system because when I get back to my desk, I'd usually have 1 or 2 gifts waiting for me. And those gifts looked like these little notes. And the notes read, loser, dork, geek. And you know what I did with those notes? I took them out carefully and I put them in a folder. I brought it home with me and I pasted it into an album that I kept hidden under my bed because I really didn't know who I was anymore. And this was my guide. This is who I was. I was losing myself more and more with each day. And my mom took notice. Even though she was really busy, she decided she was going to do something about this. So she enrolled me in these accelerated academic programs, which I loved. Taekwondo, which I thought was awesome. And then the real kicker, John Robert Powers Modeling School. Now, I'm going to let you guess which one didn't really work out well for a tomboy. It was not a great moment. I remember sitting in that interview thinking, oh, look, I had a slide. Totally missed that one. There you go. I remember sitting in that interview thinking, this is horrible. And the guy conducting the interview literally was looking at me like a disease was just brought into his office. But, you know, he said all the cutesy things. Oh, cute little girl. And I was just like, please, man, I totally know what you're thinking right now. But my mom paid him a lot of money, so I got to go. And her plan kind of worked. Instead of feeling 100% dread when I went to school, I kind of was at the 95% mark. It was amazing, a 5% decrease. But that 5% decrease actually opened the doors for a disaster. In 5th grade, it was parent-teacher night, and the project we had to do for the class was we had this coat of arms. And this coat of arms had 4 quadrants, and in each quadrant, we were supposed to write something we wanted to be in the future. And mine is a very typical 10-year-old. I decided the vocational fields that were acceptable to me were international corporate lawyer, archaeologist, scientist, and model. It looked something like this. I waited for everybody to leave the class before I decided to hang mine up on the locker like we were supposed to. But after they left, I got up, got a piece of tape off on my teacher's desk, tacked it on the wall, and was kind of proud. I was a bit excited, like I'm standing up for myself. This feels good. But the big surprise was around the corner. The next morning, I got to school a bit early and I went through the door and stopped. Something was terribly wrong. There were kids huddled around my locker, particularly the popular kids, and the boy I had a crush on at the time. And there wasn't a teacher in sight. I didn't have to hear the comms to know something was wrong. But then they started. Ashley wants to be a model? She's fat. She can't be a model. She's ugly. That's so funny she thinks that. I couldn't move. Someone must have seen me because before I knew it, all eyes were on me. And some kids looked horrified, and most of them laughed. I sprinted to the office. I acted like I was sick. I called my mom, and before anyone knew it, I was home. For the entire week, I would not go to school. I sat there, and I went through Vogue magazine after Vogue magazine, trying to find someone that looked like me, someone to disprove what these kids had said, but I didn't find it. Instead, I had that book, though. That book with all those notes that told me who I was, who I'm supposed to be. Me being absent from school that entire week made everything that much worse. Over time, what I learned to do was I figured out how to find out what the teacher was going to assign me, so I'd actually get my homework assignments done months in advance. Anything to avoid school. And I became really good at it. I became good at acting like I didn't know what I was doing, and then finishing it up quickly. Anything to get rid of being around these kids. In 6th grade, however, one of the only tethers in my life to the world was leaving for college. My brother was a blooming mathematician, and he had to leave, and that was devastating to me. And I didn't know how to handle it. What I didn't know at the time was that was literally going to be the worst year of my life. My brother left for college, and then my mom got sick. Sicker and sicker. We went to Stanford, and they kept testing her, testing her, testing her, and then finally, they sent us to oncology. She had an incredibly rare cancer. Now, to give you an idea of how rare, there was only experimental treatment available. And that experimental treatment looked like this. Very low chances of working, very high chance that she would go blind, and very high chance she'd incur brain damage. I was 10 years old when we heard this conversation, and he told my mom she didn't have long to live. I understood what was going on perfectly. He told her to go home and think about it, and she turned to me, and she grabbed my hand, she looked back at him and said, "There's nothing to think about. We're doing this." What she was telling me in that moment was, there's no way I'm going to abandon you. I'm going to fight. I will not leave you alone. That meant the world to me. Over the course of the next few weeks, word started getting around, and people were sympathetic. But what was very weird about it was that the more my mom would fight, the more people would look at us with pity. And then, over time, people started coming up to her and saying, "You know, the odds are really against you. You should really use your time more wisely." But she stuck to it. She was a champion. 5 days a week, we would go to Stanford Radiation, and we would get treated. I was with her all the time, so that's just the way I see it as we. And, you know, some nights we'd have to stay there overnight. I'd literally go from school to the hospital, back to school. And, you know, after 2 months or so, she had to get a custom mask made because her face was so burnt, she couldn't actually let sun touch it. But still, she would drive me to school, and as she was dropping me off, she said, "You're going to be stuck with me for a very long time." And then she'd just smile. And something about her strength had the most wondrous, contagious, and remarkable impact on me. This was the darkest time of my life. Words could never express how sad and lonely I felt. But that strength that she showed me made me realize something deep, and I found clarity in that. When I was in the waiting rooms and I saw kids my own age, not waiting for their parents, but getting treatment themselves, something was changing inside of me. Something, that dark void was deeply changing, and it didn't become evident until the most popular girl in the class decided that she was going to use my mom as a target. She had made my life miserable for years. And all the kids have been trained not to talk about me or to me, because I was kind of like the plague at this point. But she needed her dose of attention, and so she went for it. I was within an earshot of her when she said, you know, Alice, she's a witch. That's why this happened to her. And all of a sudden, the meek, shy, unconfrontational girl just disappeared. I had it. I went back to being that girl that would hold a baseball bat and swing the ball as hard as possible. All those fragments of who I once was came back together. I beelined over to her, and within minutes had her in tears. It was also the first time I had ever dropped an F-bomb, and man, I did it surgically. All of her little posse, her little subservient followers, looked dumbfounded, but I felt like an idiot. I'm like, really? All this time, these are the people I let control my life? I mean, look at them. They're morons. But the truth of the matter was, I was actually the stupidest person of them all because I let it happen. But then I realized what it was. See, the thing is, dignity is a human right. And when you don't recognize yourself as being human, not being treated with dignity becomes fair. I could see my mom as being human, and thus worth being treated with love. But I saw myself as this thing, this it, this worthless item. I let these kids decide who I was going to be because I had no sense of self. I constantly was looking for external validation. And that was dangerous. And though that moment came, I knew it was the last time it would ever happen. I decided from then on, it would never be the case again. By 8th grade, I graduated half a year before the rest of my class. I also went back when I was in sophomore in high school. I was in senior math and science classes. And I went back to being the boys that I liked at their own game, which was very fun. One of them actually ended up becoming my boyfriend for some time. And today, my best friend, my mom, is the healthiest and happiest she's ever been. She's also the first to survive that treatment. And she's here today, so I insist that everybody embarrass her because she was not supposed to come here. That's right, that's her, right there. I was going to show you that slide. That was me in 8th grade. I knew autocorrect was going to be huge, by the way, so I just want to say that's why the spelling was so low. Psychic moment. Anyway, if there's anything I want the people here to take away from what I'm saying, it's this. Have expectations of yourself that cast shadows over the expectations others may impose upon you. You will live a life you respect. You will surprise them, but most importantly, you will surprise yourself. Thank you.
Ashley, thank you so much for allowing us a glimpse into your life. It's amazing how you drew such incredible strength from your mother, and being able to refine yourself even after all of those challenges. Our final speaker for this session is Crystal Wong. She is the CEO of Sparkso, and she is constantly traveling the world, working with brands and event organizers to bring you an easy way to get tickets to your favorite events, like Imagine Talks. She also contributes volunteering her time with efforts she cares deeply about: homelessness, poverty, and youth empowerment. Today, she'll be sharing with us how to live forward with the end in mind. I'm proud to introduce Crystal Wong.
Good morning. Wow, what a journey it truly has been for me to be here. I actually spend every New Year's in Mexico celebrating with my fiance and his family, and airplane flight tickets keep going up every year, so I didn't book it until last night, and I almost missed my flight. I was preparing to call Francis to tell him I wouldn't make it, but I made it, so I'm very excited because I get to talk to you about a life-changing concept that has transformed my life called life planning. And most importantly, I'm going to share my personal story with you and how I've implemented it and how I changed how I think, how I make decisions, and ultimately how I attain and retain happiness. So as a high-level view, I couldn't find a really good picture of me at 18, so bear with me. This is a stick figure version of the 18-year-old me. And at 18, I was working 3 to 4 jobs. I was single. I actually had never had a first kiss yet or a boyfriend. And I was struggling to pay my bills. I was living paycheck to paycheck, and quite quickly I developed tens of thousands of dollars in debt. Okay, so this is me. I'm 30 years old today. This is a stick figure me. And today I am the CEO of Sparkso. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm happily engaged to my best friend, and I'm financially stable and regularly donate to several charities and nonprofits. So on a high-level view, life planning has taken me from coasting through life and trying to figure out this whole adulting thing, and has taken me to this, where I am in front of you today, here at Imagine Talks. So how many of you, raise your hands, how many of you have heard of life planning? Oh, good, 2 people. I was going to say nobody. Well, for the rest of you, I just want to make it clear that I'm not here to talk to you about end-of-life planning. There's a big difference. So life planning is about getting the life that you want and living today consciously so that you can attain your goals for tomorrow. And end-of-life planning is a reactive way of just trying to figure out what you're going to do with the last few days of your life, or years, hopefully. So first, I put this little subtitle here, scanned printed photo. I know this photo is blurry. This is before digital photos were a thing. So this is a scanned version of a printed photo of me and my family in 2006 at my high school graduation. And yes, a disclaimer is my little brother is missing from this photo. Shout out to my little brother. So to start my story off, I grew up at the Chinese family with Chinese parents, and like most Asian parents, they just wanted to teach us the value of a dollar and hard work. And what that meant to them was telling me and my brother that we were poor. Now, we're not actually poor, but you don't know any better growing up. So every year I hear, we're poor, we can't afford this, we can't afford that, you can't do that with your friends because we can't afford that, you can't buy these new clothes because your clothes are fine, you don't need new shoes, we can't go on vacations, we're going to take the car and drive to the park. So I thought I was doing my family a favor, that after high school graduation, if I moved out of my parents' house and started working full-time to take care of myself, I would help them out. But as most of you, hopefully maybe not as bad as me, but adulting was pretty hard. You know, I didn't really know how to do my laundry at 18, couldn't cook, didn't really know how to wash dishes without a dishwasher. Financial budgeting, I don't know, what is that, right? I mean, that's how my debt incurred. It was really hard. I was putting myself through college, I was working 4 jobs to pay for college and to pay for rent, and still put myself into debt because I didn't know any better. So eventually, at my deepest depression and highest amount of debt, I turned to books. I just realized that this isn't working. I need mentors. I didn't have any. I didn't have any mentors for work, relationships, life, for school, just anything. So I turned to books. I'm going to highlight these 2 books here because the life planning exercise or the iteration that I personally use in my life is derived from these 2 books. So I highly recommend them if you have not yet read them. Living Forward by Michael Hyatt and Daniel Harkavy, and The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. And just as Michael Hyatt has said in this book, a life plan is really like the 30,000-foot view of your life. It gives you an opportunity to get your head above the clouds, see in the distance, and see where you want to go in the major areas of your life. So I ask you this, are you who you want to be? Are you where you dreamed you'd be at this moment in life? Are you in a dead-end job? Are you in a relationship that you know has ended, but you just haven't broken up yet? Are you in bad relationship with some of your best friends from childhood? Are you speaking to your parents? You know, all of these things truly are on the other side of life planning, which will be giving you a GPS to what you've always dreamed of. And as Oprah says, only you have the power to take responsibility to move your life forward. So I'm going to move into just giving you a quick overview of what life planning is in terms of how I apply it. And then I'm going to move into sharing a personal experience of how that has transformed me. If you want to take notes, I do encourage you. If you pull your cell phones out, that's great. If you just want to go on Instagram, even better. Just make sure to tag me at Crystal Kelly and at imaginetalks.org. So there are seven steps to the iteration that I do. So it's not necessarily exactly as the authors had explained. The first is that you want to write down all of the categories of people in your life that are important to you, including categories of people that have a regular occurrence in your life. So, for example, categories would be something like family, friends, colleagues, church members, sports teams. The second is that you want to write down specific people in those categories who are important to you. So, for family, for example, I wrote down my mom, my dad, my brother. For categories that I wasn't that close, I would just list aunts and uncles under family. Thirdly, this is the part that takes a bit of emotional time from you. You want to imagine yourself at your funeral. Now, it can be hard to do because most of us are quite young in this room, or all of us. But yeah, you want to imagine you're at your funeral. And so what would these people that you've listed as the most important people in your life, what would they say about you at your funeral? Now, it's not what would they say about you today at your funeral. It's what would they say about you in a perfect world, in a dream world. That's what you want to write. So things like, how did you treat them? Did you love them? Were you there for them? Were you reliable? You want to write down those kinds of things. The fourth thing you want to write down is the purpose. So what is the purpose of your relationship with these people? The next one is your long-term vision. So moving forward from today, what is the long-term vision that you have in this relationship with this person who you wrote down as important to you? Then you want to go back over the whole list that you've just written down about your funeral, about your purpose, about how you want them to remember you, and cross off everything that is true of you today. And if you're like me, I crossed almost nothing off. And what is left is the difference between who you are right now and who you dream of being in these relationships. And that's what's going to matter. And the last step is coming up with small, actionable items that you can commit to get you to today, to tomorrow, which is who you want to be. So as I share my personal experience with this exercise, which I do every year, if not more, I leave you with this question to think about: how much of your life is intentional and how much of your life is reactional? I started with the picture of my family because it really was the catalyst for everything, and I'm glad everything went the way it did. But ultimately, when I was 18, life was just really hard, and what I wrote down for what I wish my mom would say about me at my funeral is probably very similar, if not exactly what you guys would write. And it was very simple. I just wrote something like, I hope my mom writes that she knows that I love her and that I appreciated her. I wanted my mom to write that we spent time together, we went for hikes, we shared meals, that we were friends, that she knew about my life and she actually knew me, and that she knew that I loved her because of my actions and how I showed her. And it sounds really simple, I know, and unfortunately at that time, as I mentioned earlier, I was going to school, I was working 3 to 4 jobs, I was failing at being an adult. At 18, you kind of want to go clubbing and have friends, so I was trying to do everything. I didn't sleep. And so I regularly got these kinds of voicemails from my mom, quite literally. She would call and I wouldn't pick up because I was either working or I was sleeping or I was in school or I was just trying to be an adult. And it would say, "Hey honey, are you alive? No, really. I haven't heard from you in a few weeks now. Please call me back or email me and just let me know you're okay. Okay, honey? I love you." And just doing that funeral exercise and writing what I would want my mom to say about me and just realizing that I'm regularly getting these voicemails from my mom really just was an epiphany for me. Like, how could I be so far from the kind of daughter that I want to be? And at such a simple thing like picking up my phone. So my mom was the first person that I did this exercise for, and it just transformed everything else, because once I thought about my mom, I thought about my career, I thought about, more intentional and consciously trying to figure out who I want to be and what I can do to get there. So this is what I wrote down for the purpose for my parents and my mom. My parents have raised me, loved me, and supported me through life. I want to love and support them as well. I want to be able to positively contribute to their lives and encourage them in their marriage and their friendship. My long-term vision was that I want to develop a close relationship with them, one that is open, vulnerable, and honest. I will make time to spend with them and invite them into the depths of my life. So the actionable goals that I wrote down were very simple, but remember at that time I was working so many jobs, going to school, trying to have friends, trying to volunteer, and so this made a big difference for me. So the first step that I wrote was, I will answer my phone as often as I can when they call. And I will call them back when I miss their calls. I will initiate at least one meal a month with them. I will make an effort to spend time with them outside of meals. I will include them in my life milestones, ups and downs. And so, very, very simple steps, but that is what ultimately got me into where I am with my relationship with my mom and my parents today. Even though we may not share the same religion or the same faith, we openly talk about what's going on in our relationships, in their marriage, in my engagement with my fiance. We go on hikes, we even go on double date vacations sometimes. They know that I love them. They actively know that I call them and pick up their calls. I've taught them how to text message, which has really helped. And what I really want to point out though, in doing such a life planning exercise, whether you want to start with your personal life, with your friends or your spouse, or you want to start with your career life, with your colleagues and your bosses, or other aspect, is that the 2 points are that externals I cannot control. So the only person you can ever control when being conscious about your life and your decisions is yourself. And that's the biggest part about life planning. You're going to figure out who you are today and who you want to be tomorrow. And you have to remind yourself that you can only control yourself and how you feel and how you treat people in your life. You cannot control how they receive you, or how they react to your intentions. So, for example, if I did all those things that I had just listed, the simple things, like pick up my phone, initiate meals, talk to my parents, but they were always busy, they couldn't make time for lunch or dinner, or they didn't, want to talk about their marriage, I can't change that. But I would be free, I would still feel free, and I would still be happy because I know that I'm doing all that I can to be who I want to be in our relationship. So I can still love on them, I can still be happy, I can be free from any sort of obligation to having to control that outcome. So I can only control how I treat them, and that's what matters at the end of the day. The second is that the choices I make with regard to the external. So you are also in control of being aware of people around you and how they receive you, and understanding how you want to be in those situations. So if I know that my parents did not want to see me for lunch, or they did not want to talk about their marriage, I might edit or reiterate how I want to be, or how I would like this relationship to be with them. Understanding who you are and who you want to be will truly free you and make you happy, because it's not going to be about how other people think about you. It doesn't matter what they say or how they receive you, because you know that you are the truest self that you can be. So I'm going to leave you with these two last quotes. One by Stephen R. Covey, who was an author that I had recommended. I am not a product of my circumstances. I am a product of my decisions. So if you find yourself coasting through life and just letting life happen to you, statistically speaking, 50% of the time, you will get what you would like to happen. Just statistically. It's like flipping a quarter, heads and tails, right? 50% of the time heads, 50% of the time tails. The other 50% life is not going to happen the way you want it to go, just by coasting through life and letting life happen to you. So if you really want to understand how you can live the life that you dream of and have the relationships with people that you care about, then life planning is really for you. And last quote is by Oprah. See this moment for what it is. Take responsibility and move forward. So I challenge you today, even if you are happy or you think you're happy with your life, if you don't know where you're going to be tomorrow, in a year, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, if you haven't even thought about your relationships with people, I challenge you to think about it. Because defining who you are simply based on career goals or jobs or houses or financial situation, it will never fulfill you. Because there's going to be another goal, there's going to be a bigger house, there's going to be another job, there's going to be more in the material world. But when you focus on the relationships that you've wrote down are the most important to you, and you know that you're loving on them and you're treating them how you want to be in those relationships, you will be truly happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal, for reminding us of what we can and can't control to shape our lives for how we want it to be. But wow, I've already learned so much from just this one session. From Rana's tips on shaping your mindset, to Kim's advice on not letting perfection hold you back, to Ashley's road to finding her voice, and just what Crystal shared with us, how to truly find what makes us happy. We'll now have a brief intermission, so please take the time to grab kombucha and tea from Coast Kombucha and Shincha Tea. And don't forget that a raffle is happening throughout this conference, and you can win. So, our volunteers are wearing purple name tags if you have any questions, and we'll see you back here in 15 minutes for our next session on cultural diversification.